Hi, and welcome to How to Grow Your Business with Kevin Willett. As you can see, I got my friend Penny with us from Total Circle HR. Hi, Penny. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I have over 25 years of HR experience, but I didn't start out in HR. I started out in operations the first 10 years of my career. I didn't even like HR back then. They were my blockers. But I fell into HR and realized from having that operations background that it really helped me become the HR professional that I am because it helps me look at the totality of the business and how HR fits into the business and supports it instead of the other way around.
Makes sense. So, Penny, in class, when I'm talking to my students who want to start a business, we talk about hiring employees. I'm like, hey, how would you go about hiring somebody? And usually the answer is, especially from the guys, I'm going to hire my boys because they're my boys. I want to have a business and I want to hire all my friends and we're going to crush it together. And I'm like, well, what happens when your boys aren't doing what you need them to do? What are you going to do? It's hard to try to separate friendship from business, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the hardest things. And I will say my first job when I was in operations, I was that operator. And then I got promoted. And the hardest thing is that one day I'm commiserating or I'm hanging out with
Yep.
everyone. And the next day I have to say, Kevin, can we have a conversation because you're not doing something correctly? So it's really, really hard. And we have to be careful when we're hiring because all of us have like we want to hire like us. So we sometimes have those blinders that's unconscious bias. And when we start to hire friends and family, we get into this very, very gray area because just like I said, one day I'm hanging out, I'm fun, this, and I'm not really seen as that person that supervisor or a manager. I'm just seen as that friend. So it's really, really hard to hold people accountable. And everybody needs to be held accountable. And nobody wants to be told that they're not doing something right when I was just out with you on the weekend, just hanging out.
Yep. Because I went through that when I worked at the bank. My two nephews worked for me, and luckily they moved on. But there was those days when, like, I was harder on them, to be honest. Because when they messed up, they were my nephews. When they did good, they were Scott and Chris. My brother's company was the IT company, and something happened. I had to fire my brother's company. That's an awkward conversation. Now he's a grown adult. He's like, look, I understand what happened. You got to do what you got to do. I mean, he took it, he wasn't like mad about it. But if you're not prepared to fire your brother, you probably shouldn't hire him in the first place.
Oh, exactly. So you sort of have to say, and like this is a cliche, right? It's not personal. I'm running a business,
Yep.
but it's really, really hard. Like you said, you have to fire your brother and then still sit across from your brother
Yep.
at family events. So it's really hard. I'm not saying don't hire. Look, there's plenty of successful companies that are family-owned business. I have a client who his famous line is, "But Penny, we're family." And I said, "Yeah, that's all fine and good until somebody gets ticked off,
Yep.
and they could litigate or something like that." So, not saying don't hire family. I really believe you have to set that boundary when you do hire family or friends. The same thing. It's the same thing with friends. You sort of have to set that boundary, right? Like on Friday and Saturday, Sunday, we're family. We're not going to talk about work. But when we're in the workplace, I, I'm I'm your manager, or I'm this, or I'm that, and we're not going to take it personally, which again is one of the hardest things to be able to overcome.
I see that with my students. So what do you do? I work for my mom. I work for my dad. What's that like? Complete hell. Because when I mess up at work, my mom and dad are holding me accountable because they know all the other employees are watching to make sure it's the same thing. And then I come home, we're sitting having dinner, and they're still yelling at me over it.
Hmm.
So like you said, you have to have those hard boundaries. Okay, it's over, and now you're just my daughter Penny again. You're not the person I yelled at work. And I've had a number of students going, you know what, I did it for, because I needed money in school. But as soon as I could get quote unquote another job, a real job, it's like, hey, mom, dad, peace out, because I'm not, for the sake of our family, I don't want to work with you because I don't want to have us fight and stuff. So sometimes, like you said, it's having that hard boundary, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And again, a lot of us start out if we have a family business and it's easy, we can just work there. But like you said, you start to realize I don't want to work with my family all day. I live with my family all day, or I see my family all the time, so I want to go out on my own. But I go back to what I said. There's so many family businesses that are successful because they know how to separate. They know that this is business. When we get into the office, this is how it's going to be. And when we get home, I'm not going to hold like that grudge because you fudged the numbers or you added an extra zero and it cost us $100,000.
Yep.
We have to just know how to separate those two things.
Last question on this, because this happened to one of my friends. He has a successful business, and he's like, this is my legacy, Penny. I'm going to pass this on to my children.
Mm-hmm.
And they both said, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Yes.
I seen what you
Yes.
did. That you were extremely successful. I don't think I could keep the company at the level you built it, and it's not my path. And he was crushed. He's like, I built
Mhm.
this all for nothing, just to sell it, when it's my time to go. So, what's your advice? And how do you, again, going back to it's personal. That one feels personal to him, like they rejected him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my own brother owns his own company and three daughters. Two of them said no, but one did say yes. I think, what's really important is any business owner has like that succession plan and has like, if I'm not here tomorrow, who's going to take over my business? And I think for that scenario, you have to know that your children actually don't want to be in the business, and you have to have those tough conversations. Yes, that is hard to take it personally. I have a daughter in HR. I would hope that one day she would take over Total Circle HR, but you sort of have to have those conversations before, and you have to have a plan. Anything can happen in life. So you have to say, okay, if something happens to me, who is actually going to take over my business?
So, Penny, if people have questions about this topic, what's the best way to reach out to you, my friend?
Sure, they can reach me at penny@totalcirclehr.com.
Awesome. As always, I appreciate you taking a few minutes calling the show, and thanks for being my friend.
Thank you.